Hey, folks, welcome to the Michael Steele podcast. We're going to have a great conversation. I get to go home this week with my man, Rick Ungar. I'm so happy Rick can stop by to sort of help us open up the conversation on the Trump indictment, the Republican reaction, and certainly the great news for the Biden administration on inflation and the economy. And yet Democrats still want to replace him. I don't get it. But Rick gets into it. He's a host of a nationally syndicated radio show, the Rick Ungar Show, as well as SiriusXM, Steele and Ungar back in the day with me. We got to hang out. He is a progressive who's made his mark, certainly in radio and in television, by being willing to mix it up with conservatives like me. And we've had a good time doing that. He is a former political commentator and contributor to Forbes.com. He's a lawyer, television producer, all around good guy. Stick around for a great conversation with the one and only Rick Ungar coming up next on the Michael Steele podcast. Well, everybody, you know, when you've got stuff boiling in the news the way it's boiling in the news, I got to go back to my man. I got to go back home to Rick Ungar because we always roll like that. We had that conversation that takes it to a level that a lot of people don't. I'm so glad to get you back in the room, Rick. How you been, baby?
Always a pleasure to be here. I've been good. I mean, ever since that amazing victory in the Canadian Open on Sunday, I've just been totally.
You've just been. Rick doesn't know what to do with himself.
There's definitely some truth in that.
He's just a whole new man because of that Canadian Open. All eyes were peeled up. Well, look, there is a lot happening, and I want to start with, before I get into things like the politics and the economy and all of that stuff, which, you know, again, Joe Biden's got to be sitting there going, what the hell else do I need to do?
Ain't that the truth? It's unbelievable.
But we'll get into that.
And that's when he's talking to people who are supposed to be on his side.
Right. He's talking to Democrats.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, what else you want me to do here? You know, I got us out of the woods. We're on a freeway. We got all the lanes. We own the lanes. There's nobody else. But before we get into those lanes with the current president, let's talk about the former president. Today's a big day. I'll just put it on the table because I think people who listen to me know how I feel about this. I'm not impressed that this is the first time this has happened. I'm over that. I'm not blown away that this involves Donald Trump. I am shocked that anyone thinks that he wouldn't be the first president in this position.
Agreed.
But here we are with the president of the United States expected to be arraigned this afternoon in Florida. A number of interesting facets of this, Rick. One, I'd like to get your overview of what this process and what this says before we get into the nitty-gritty of the charges in that compelling. And I'm telling people, do not even come and listen to this podcast if you haven't read the indictment, because otherwise you're lost in the conversation. You have no, so just turn it off right now and go read it and then come back. Okay, because it just doesn't. I mean, I'm just tired of people being ignorant and just put stuff out that's out there for you to look at it. You don't need to go to some whacked out website that's rewriting the indictment to make it sound like, you know, Donald Trump was, you know, Jesus Christ crucified on a cross. But the reality of it is, it's a solid indictment, 37 charges laid out. What I find interesting, Rick, is that the former president of the United States, as being reported just an hour or so ago, is not able to find anybody to represent him from Florida. He cannot find a Florida lawyer to represent him. In fact, he is a former top federal prosecutor, Todd Blanche, and the former Florida Solicitor General, Chris Licht, who are purportedly appearing in court on his behalf today. But he has no local representation, which he's going to have to get at some point. So you have these interesting pieces that are being set up. You know, clearly his call to his minions to come rally to his support. We'll see how that plays out. But how are you assessing this moment right now?
Wow. Let me just pick up on the thread first of his not being able to find a local lawyer. And I don't say this to be funny, but you and I are both lawyers. Would you represent Donald Trump in this action?
Oh, hell no.
No,
No.
absolutely not. And
No, I
not
wouldn't.
because I believe he's guilty. That's not always relevant when you're an attorney.
Right.
It's because there is absolutely no upside. There
Right.
really isn't.
No.
Number one, you're probably going to lose the case, and that's never good. Number two, the notoriety that a lawyer would hope to gain by taking on such a high profile case, in most instances, that's going to do your career some good. Not in this instance. It's
Yeah.
not going to help you. And number three, odds are you're not going to get paid.
Right.
And,
Which
and
actually is
that's
probably number
real.
one for most of these
Yeah.
guys.
So there's just no motivation for a local counsel to want to take him on. I mean, how weird will it be if Donald Trump ends up with a court-appointed attorney? I mean, that's not something I've heard discussed.
I forgot about that part of it.
It's a real possibility.
It's a,
Oddly
yeah,
enough.
no, it is a real possibility. It is an
So
absolute real possibility.
there's so much odd about this. Starting with who, really through the luck of the draw, became the judge.
Yeah.
This is the same judge who was very, very, very easy on Donald Trump the last time she had one of his cases in front of her.
And that's
got,
Judge Eileen Cannon.
Yes,
Yeah.
she got smacked down big time. Again, if you're a lawyer and you're listening, you know that sometimes your opinions are going to be reversed. That happens. That's part of the system. But there's having an opinion reversed, and there's having the appellate court basically say you are a moron.
Right.
and that's really what happened here. And we're not talking about a liberal ninth, circuit,
Right.
California.
The 11th Circuit is conservative.
Damn conservative.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it says a lot about the fact that, I think this wasn't a matter of Judge Eileen in the first situation getting over her skis. It really wasn't, and why I think the 11th Circuit came down the way they did, almost in a personal rebuttal,
Really?
rebut to her, was that she was over her skis in support of him, trying to find ways to help him, which was not what her role is or should be. My concern about her in this matter is that she gilds the lily in such a way as to create that reasonable doubt for that one juror, because all he needs is one to say no.
That's right.
To throw this whole thing out, and that to me is a problem. She's already shown her propensity, her desire, her willingness to put her finger on the scale on behalf of Donald Trump. My suspicion, Rick, is if she is a true MAGA lawyer, that rebuke by the 11th Circuit did not faze her.
That's concerning.
Yeah, I don't think it fazed her. I think it's the luck of the draw that she was up at the time this case came through the court system. But it just, to me, I'm wholly suspicious of her. She has shown me who she is, and I believe it.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's going to be a fair judge.
And the fact of the matter is, she's going to remain the judge on this case. Anybody who's got, hopes and dreams of somebody stepping up to replace her, that's just not going to happen. That's not how it works. The only good news is at least you've got the 11th Circuit, who has shown a propensity to be fair.
Right.
They're going to be looking over her shoulder pretty closely. So if she does, as you put it, gild the lily to affect that one juror, and that's a very legitimate concern on your part, the 11th Circuit's going to have their eye on her.
They're going to have their eye on her. And I think it's also digging a little bit into the jury pool process. The voir dire, which is that process in which they interview citizens to be jurors, to be impaneled as a juror on a case, is going to be significant here, because it's going to require a deft handling of these individuals, sort of figuring out a way to get them to reveal their true feelings or their true ability to be impartial, to listen dispassionately to the evidence, and not get caught up in Trumpism or their MAGA culture if they happen to be supporters of Trump in that way.
Well, and there's
particularly given that it's Florida.
There's an upside there too. Looking for both sides of the fence here. The upside is, if Donald Trump is convicted, and we all have to do our job and say he's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But if he is convicted, there's not going to be ability to say, well, sure, you had a liberal Antifa jury pool up in Washington, D.C. These are people, peers coming from Trump's own territory. So that's, useful. I got to ask you a question.
Sure thing.
Let's say Donald Trump is convicted. Do you see him going to jail ever?
No, I don't. And the reason I don't is that everybody is fixated on continuing to treat him as if he were, if this were George Bush or Bill Clinton who got into trouble. Right. And meaning treating him as a traditional, typical Republican president who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time doing the wrong stuff. This is part and parcel of who Trump is. This is the nature of the man. He has been involved in more litigation than any other president in the history of the presidency, before he came to the presidency and since his presidency. So he has a tendency to expose himself to these types of things. So I am not surprised. So I see him as any other criminal defendant. I don't see him any longer as the former president of the United States. Right. He forfeited, in my view, he forfeited that privilege. He forfeited that right, if you will, of the benefits of that office in his post-presidency, because he's now, as alleged in 37 counts, as laid out in the indictment, in text messages in which this man said, yeah, I probably should have declassified these at the time, but I didn't. But now let's just pretend I did and move on, which is essentially what that was all about.
I get to the same place as you, but I get there in a slightly different way. I don't think he'll ever go to jail either. But what I envision playing out is, if he's convicted, he certainly has enough money to delay incarceration for a very long time through the appellate process. We just saw that with the young lady who just went to jail from the blood company.
Yeah. What's it? Yes. Yeah.
You know who I mean.
Yeah.
So, he can delay it for a long time. And at the end of the day, if there's no way around it, he'll simply leave the country. He'll get out of here. He will. He's not going to spend his final days in jail.
Yeah, I just don't think I don't think there's going to be a stomach for doing that. There may be some type of plea or arrangement, better put.
Well, see, that's where Judge Cannon comes back into the picture.
Right.
Even if she were to conduct a fair trial, if it ends in conviction, she certainly has the latitude within her powers not to follow the recommendations when it comes to sentencing. And
so can they put on the table then, in that instance, all right, you've now been convicted. We in order for me not to impose sentencing, you step down from the presidential race, because that's essentially what we saw with we've seen a number of times with a number of other elected officials,
right,
including Richard Nixon. At the end of the day, it boiled down to, dude, this is going to go down, and if you don't want it to go down, the best bet is for you to resign.
Right.
That's probably an option for him. I don't know.
I don't think it's a legal option. I don't think you can ever legally tell somebody that they can't run, but it certainly could be part of an understanding.
Right.
I don't know. That's tricky. That's very tricky.
It is. I just don't see him at this point. I don't see him playing ball in any fashion with anybody. No. Because he's a hard ass, and he does not lose in his world. And so I just see him finding a way, delaying the process through appeals or whatever.
And see, I see
think,
him living out his days in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, there is that. I take note of the fact that Ivanka no longer wants to go by Ivanka Trump. She wants to be Ivanka Kushner.
That's right.
I'm like, oh, really?
That's right. No,
Yeah, so
his
maybe
family
Saudi is his friend.
Family's ditching him in droves.
In droves. Yeah, so it's going to be it's going to be interesting to watch this story take shape in any number of ways. I guess the question, the sort of overarching, when you pull back from it, Rick, does this indictment feel different, certainly from Bragg's indictment in New York, and the E. Jean Carroll case and other potential indictments to come? Georgia, we don't know exactly, and that's probably going to happen next month. This one for me does feel different, and I think it has to do more with the fact of the way Jack Smith just laid it out. This guy, he is the best prosecutorial surgeon I've ever seen in terms of laying it out the way he did.
I think it is different, but I think the difference might come in public reaction. I mean, look at what's happened in New York. E. Jean Carroll was civil. That's number one.
Right.
So that piques our curiosity. We find it interesting that he was ordered to pay $5 million, i.e. guilty. The other case, if you objectively view it, there is kind of a feeling of, it's like a lot of misdemeanors that the New York City DA found a way to boost up into felonies.
Right.
And that has left everybody kind of wondering, well, yeah, but.
Right.
I think the case in Georgia is going to be totally at the other end of the spectrum. I think, if there's one case that the public is going to be able to understand,
it's that one. Yeah.
It's that case.
Yeah. And largely because we hear him actually saying,
right. It's on tape. Exactly right.
I need you to go find these votes for me so I can win.
Now Trump supporters will say, well, yeah, but he didn't mean go make them up. He meant, recount. They're there. We know that they're there.
Yeah, and because most normal people use the word recount, right?
Yeah, nothing illegal about that. So, you'll still get your people who are willing to let them off the hook with that. But I think that has always, for me, been the pivotal case. This case is a pretty damn good one. As you say, read the indictment. It couldn't be clearer. You talk about, a speaking indictment, something in very clear, plain English that anybody can understand, replete with the text and the emails. It's just all there. I mean, it's kind of impossible to imagine how a jury could turn their back on what's in the indictment. And then, oh, by the way, it's been said many times over the past few days, if you think everything was in that indictment, I got news for you. As Chris Christie said the other night, there's never been a prosecutor who doesn't hold back.
Oh, of course it's got to hold, of course. And that's something that, I think people aren't necessarily prepared for, because they think those 49 pages contains everything that Jack Smith wants to bring. No, Jack Smith just brought you the appetizer. Right. We haven't even gotten to the main course and the dessert yet. So meaning that there is much more, which to me is why the GOP reaction to all of this has been so typically disappointing and so typically GOP. When you look at, for example, just to throw a couple of quotes and to get your reaction to these individuals who want to take on Donald Trump. I'm going to defeat Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to go down. Okay, so Ron DeSantis, what do you think about this indictment? Quote, why so zealous in pursuing Trump, yet so passive about Hillary or Hunter? End quote. Mike Pence, quote, I'm deeply troubled to see this indictment move forward. Okay, thank you, Mike. Hey, Governor Christie, you're a hard ass. What about? Well, no one is above the law, no matter how much they wish they were, end quote. Oh, okay. I'm beginning to feel a little bit better about this. Nikki, tell me what you think. Oh, quote, when you get into political prosecutions like this, it's more about revenge than it is about justice, end quote. Okay, Senator Scott, I'm with you, bro. Come on, man, help me out here. Well, quote, what we've seen is the weaponization of DOJ against a former president. Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure Vivek Ramaswamy, I'll get it right before you leave the race, end quote. Quote, I commit to pardon Trump promptly on January 20th, 2025, and to restore the rule of law in our country, end quote. Okay, so you're going to restore the rule of law by pardoning a guy who's been duly convicted of charges. Gotcha. All right. And Asa Hutchinson. What do you say, Asa? Bottom line is, this reaffirms the need for Donald Trump to respect the office and end his campaign. Thank you, Asa Hutchinson.
There was one quote there I actually give some credence to. I actually have to agree with as that actor said in the Tonys the other night, the Grand Wizard of Florida. I think that the Justice Department has slow walked the Hunter Biden case, and that's not okay. I hate to.
Why have they slow walked the Hunter? What's in their interest to do that?
Well, you can envision.
I mean, because this goes back to Bill Barr, right? This is not just here. So this has been slow walked for 5 years.
Yeah, no, that's true. It has been, and I'm not sure I know the full motivation, but I don't know. It just shouldn't have taken 5 years. He may be.
But isn't this the same case that's been investigated and nothing was there in the first place? So why would the DOJ? Why would the DOJ jump out in front of something that doesn't have evidence of a crime?
If there's no evidence of a crime, I'm going to agree with you. I am.
And he was a private citizen, and
but
so
I don't recall the DOJ ever saying that we've investigated. There's no evidence of a crime, and this case is closed. I don't recall them ever saying that.
Yeah, but everybody else did, and that evidence was. Well, no, there was congressional investigations into. I mean, the Hunter Biden thing.
There still is.
I mean, but I'm just saying the Hunter Biden case has been before authorities going back to the middle of the Trump administration, if not in the beginning of the Trump administration, and there have been numerous reports that people who've looked at this. I mean, the investigations that occurred overseas in Ukraine and elsewhere, investigations that have occurred here. Look, I'm not defending the guy.
No, I understand.
I think he's got issues, but I don't know if those issues raise to the question of, federal indictments and illegal behavior, because A, his daddy wasn't in office during this time. B, he was a private citizen engaged in private affairs, and unless he didn't pay taxes or incorrectly filled out a federal form, I don't understand what we're going after.
And it kind of looks like maybe he didn't pay taxes. But I'm not going after Hunter Biden. Look, for one thing, I had never understood why we care so much. He's not the president of the United States.
Well, care so much because Republicans told us you should care about it.
Well, that's true. That's true.
That's why you care about it.
We have had
just like we cared about Hillary Clinton, and the woman sat there for 11 hours, and what did they get from it?
Absolutely zero.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, and the whole comparison to Hillary Clinton is nonsense. We all know it's nonsense. In that case, the Justice Department did investigate and did clear her. Right. So now,
but yet and still, Republicans, as I say, Ron DeSantis, Hillary Clinton, right out of the mouth of stupid comes more stupid.
And by the way, let's say that Ron DeSantis has a point. Let's say there's an argument to be made that Hillary Clinton could have been charged, certainly not with the same things that Donald Trump has been charged with. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that she could have been, but she wasn't. That doesn't forgive any bad behavior or illegal behavior on Trump's part. It just means that, this time they got him, and you may believe that the last time they didn't get her.
Right.
It's not an excuse. And the fact that that's what the Republican leadership is turning to as their excuse just completely exposes them.
Well, but I think that's my main point with the Republican reaction. It's the old, I don't want to deal with the elephant in the room, Donald Trump. So I'm going to make you pay attention to the mouse in the corner.
Right. It really annoys me, not just because they're doing it, but because there are enough Americans who are susceptible to it.
Well, that's all that matters. All I need is one.
Science. Yeah.
All I need is one. I get one sapsucker out there to start screaming what I'm saying. I'm good, because now the press is going to move to that person. They're going to put the cameras on them. The notepads are going to come out, and they're going to write those stories.
See, I want to go up to all those people and say, tell you what, if the Justice Department turns course here and they agree to go and indict Hillary Clinton, are you okay now with Donald Trump being indicted?
No, they won't be.
They won't be, will they?
No, they won't be.
right.
That's the stupid part of all of this. This is why I'm just, that narrative relative to Trump will never change.
Right.
It will never change. They could indict Hillary. They could indict Hunter and his computer
and his father. And Vice President Pence.
Vice President, they can indict all those people. Yeah. And these assholes will still come back to the same story when it comes to Donald Trump. And every quote up, they will find a reason to say that this indictment of him was a weaponization of the DOJ.
That's right.
And so it doesn't matter. And that's what it goes back to the first point I was saying about this whole, oh my God, Donald Trump, this is the first time we've been here. Well, we're here because this motherfucker brought us here.
Right.
That's why we're here. I mean, we're not here because the DOJ decided, you know what, let's just go make up some shit about Donald Trump and go after him. I mean, Bill Barr, and we all know what Bill Barr did for Donald Trump, right? Bill Barr looks at this indictment and goes, oh, he's screwed. He's toast. Mm-hmm. I mean,
it's all very
so Ron
silly.
DeSantis, what do you say to Bill Barr? So Bill Barr suddenly now wrong? Of course he is in their view.
Of course he's not. No, it's look, they're just all politicking. It's kind of overwhelming.
But what is that? But Rick, here's the point. You and I have talked about this for a long, long time. I mean, because what does this do to the confidence of the American people in these systems? It's what that they, in some cases, are already suspicious of because of how they respond to communities of color. Or
well, it's kind of an interesting question when you consider about half the country is not going to have any confidence for the reason that you're saying.
Right.
And the other half of the country doesn't have any confidence because they think that their man is being railroaded by a corrupt justice system.
Right.
So nobody has any confidence.
Which is a major problem. Does the DOJ need to have an enema? Yeah, we need to clean it out. There's no doubt about that. I mean,
that visual is a little rough to get over in the morning.
I'm just saying, dude, it's just they do. They need to be cleaned out. But I don't want Jim Jordan doing that. I don't want Jim Jordan leading that process. I'm sorry. And I don't want a milquetoast, attorney general that we have, doing that. You need someone with institutional conviction to understand exactly the point we were just talking about, the value of this organization to the American people, not to the Democrats, not to the Republicans, but to the American people. Which is why I think we should. And I can see downside for sure, but there's something about coming to a different way of putting an attorney general in place that diminishes the political downside.
Like
of
how?
It. I don't know. Have them run.
Oh.
like we
Well,
do.
but that wouldn't that increase the political downside?
That's why I said, that's why I
Right.
even answered my question before I posed it. My point before I really made it was I can see how, someone running for attorney general, like running for president, gets into this whole, tough on crime bullshit response,
What I
or
will do and won't do.
it will do and won't do. And it's this problem I have with judges running for office.
I agree. Completely
Um,
agree.
So it is what it is. So we're going to take a quick little moment, and when we come back, I want to get into a little bit of the presidential race, the media. There's shit happening at CNN.
You think? Aren't
Oh,
you glad you
baby.
don't work there?
Oh, baby, let me tell you. We're going to have some more fun with my man, Rick Ungar, right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the Michael Steele podcast. It's Old Home Week here as we are looking at the indictment in Florida, the woes of CNN, and a GOP trying to figure out where to go next, and a Democratic Party that even if you told them where to go next, they wouldn't know how to get there. But Rick, so let's sort of tap into the situation right now with President Biden. To me, is a case study, largely for me, on communication, right? Because I think a lot of his problems have to do with the sheer lack of I don't know, imagination by his team in communicating the success of this man. Reports out this morning shows that inflation is at the lowest point it's been since 2021. It increased, it's at a level of 4%, which is well below the 10% it was a year ago. Jobs. The jobs report last month showed over 300,000 jobs created. This administration has been at the helm of 12 million jobs plus being created since they came in, and yet the president is sitting at 45% approval. You've got Democrats saying, "Oh, I don't want him to be my nominee." I don't get it. I don't. Help me understand, because you're a Democrat. You help me understand what's going on with your people, because Republicans will be running all day long on these numbers.
I think it has nothing to do with the numbers and everything to do with the age question. I really do, because that's the only way I can explain it. Anybody who has any capability of taking a step back from their politics and being objective has to view this presidency with awe, quite frankly. I mean, it has been
amazing.
an extraordinarily successful presidency. And by the way, I swear to God, if there was a Republican in there doing the same things, I would say the same thing.
But so would Republicans. That's the thing. Republicans would be touting the same thing, man.
So it's got to be the age thing. I do agree with you. The communication has been really poor, and the Republicans have done a good job on obscuring it. I mean, man, I don't think I have ever seen such a fuss made over somebody tripping and falling on a stage over a sandbag. Guess what?
Because he's old.
You can be 13 and trip and fall over a sandbag. It's just not a sign of decrepitation. But yet they take that and run with it.
But they take it and run with it because you don't have not you personally, but the Democrats don't have a counterpunch.
No, they don't.
They assume a defensive crouch, and the incoming starts, and they're huddled over like this. I go, oh my God. I'm like, I've never seen anything like it.
You know what I would have done? You're absolutely right. The way to have dealt with that was humor. I would have put up all sorts of posts on Twitter of 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 30-year-olds tripping over things and falling.
Yes.
That's what I would have done. It would have made the point.
they've allowed the age thing to be more of a factor. My
Yep.
attitude, look, if granddad keeps bringing you goodies, why do you want granddad to stop visiting your house?
There you go. And by the way,
I don't know a grandchild in America that sits there and go, well, grandpa's too old to bring me good stuff. I tell granddad to stay home. We don't want him to come over anymore.
and if God forbid he should get reelected and die before his term is up.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
That would be unfortunate. That would be sad. But you know what? If we get one more day of him compared to the likely opposite, I'll take it. I'll take it.
No, but you know what happens under that scenarios? People will be saying, "I told y'all, I told you so." I mean, the guy won't get a break even in death. He will not get a break, and it is amazing to me.
Let me turn around and ask you a question: does he keep his vice president on the ticket?
Of course he does.
Yeah,
of course he does.
Because a lot of the concerns, I gotta say, are that she would end up president, and people aren't highly confident in that.
They may not be highly confident in that, but it doesn't matter. He's already announced the ticket.
Oh, yeah, okay. And besides,
he's not taking Kamala off the ticket.
You can't take a black woman off a Democratic
ticket. No. Now you talk about political suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, you do that, and you just basically said, no, we just don't even want to contest.
Right.
For the presidency in 2024.
I agree.
I just think that so you've got the Republicans, you've got the Democrats fretting over Biden's age. You've got Republicans fretting over gay people. I have never seen a group of people, particularly given the number of gay Republicans I know. I'm just like, this sort of anti-gay screed that the party has gotten itself into, largely fomented, and I mean, Donald Trump surprisingly has had a very, I won't say pro-gay, but he's not been anti-gay to the same extent that you see with someone like.
Which, by the way, I got to interrupt to ask you, how surprised are you that you haven't seen Republican responses to the Tony Awards, which was, an exceedingly big night and successful night for gay and transgender Americans. And I just thought that Republicans would not be able to hold back.
Well, A, they don't watch the Tony Awards. B, they don't know what the Tony Awards are for. C, if they did 1 and 2, A and B, C, what did they get? I mean, who's paying attention, right? It's just not their thing. But it also just speaks to their lack of really appreciating how the culture is all connected through a whole bunch of things. I mean, they freak out over Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, but you don't hear anything about gay and lesbian athletes, at the professional level. Now, they're going after transgender athletes at the high school level.
How do you feel about that?
I'm kind of working through it.
I've got issues with it.
I'm kind of working through it. I do have a problem with having an athlete, a transgendered athlete, competing, particularly in women's sports.
Exactly.
Because I'm sorry, biology is biology.
They got an edge.
You're not going to change your bone structure. You don't change that. You don't change certain attributes that are physiologically there by nature. So I think it becomes competitively difficult to justify.
That totally sums up my issue with it.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem fair to the women athletes.
It's not fair to the women athletes, and I think it takes it's part and parcel of how the transgendered conversation got off on the wrong foot.
Yeah. At the same time, it has to be noted, and it never is, because again, the Republicans are making such a big issue. You're talking about less than 100 athletes across the country who fit into that. Because, you know, my first thought in all of this was, well, you know what? Why not create a new league?
You can't, because there's not enough players
of them. Exactly.
It's not enough, right? I mean, and a new league in every sport, or a new league. I mean, where do you do it? Because there's such a small percentage of the population.
It's not very many.
I think there's a lot about the transgender conversation. Like I said, it got off on the wrong foot. And for Republicans, by and large, it's not about the societal impact or the cultural conversation. It is about how it's weaponized politically.
Yes.
To drive people's fears. It's no different than the caravan conversation that we saw in 2018. It's no different than the build the wall conversation that we saw in 2016. It is creating other and using that to instill fear about others. So you have that piece that's sort of hanging out there. How do you think corporate America ultimately responds, given Bud Light, Target, now Walmart? I'm laughing because Walmart is like, hey, we pride, we're proud of our pride. How do these storylines, you think, impact the upcoming election cycle for sure, but even beyond that, what should corporate America be looking to do to navigate this space?
Well, first, I give them a shout out for having the courage to take on the issue. That's number one. Number two, it fades away ultimately. It fades away. It doesn't have, I don't think, lasting impact. But I don't know. I'll tell you what, I'm not a big beer drinker, but I did buy some beer for the house the other day. And you know what I bought? Bud Light. And I never would have bought Bud Light. So, there's that plus side. But
there is that.
I admire them for standing up. I feel bad that they've been put into this into the situation for trying to do something right.
Right.
And considerate and showing support for people who don't get a lot of support. So, from me, what amazed me was Chick-fil-A, how people turned against them.
Yeah. Good Christian corporate enterprise, right?
The real thing, and people turned against them.
They're kind of living out the gospel.
Yeah.
And the base doesn't like it.
No.
What does Jesus know? He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Not on this
Love
subject.
thy neighbor? No.
Not on this subject. No, this is a non-Jesus subject. Now, it's really remarkable, and again takes us back to the same point of highlighting just how freaking stupid so many Americans are. And man, they need to get a little sunshine in their life, because all they want to do is bitch.
Well, so let's broaden that out, because I've had an issue with that for some time now, and it kind of ties into what we were saying a moment ago about the state of the economy. Inflation is down, unemployment is down,
way down.
Job creation is going very strong. Workforce development issues remain.
But can I throw into that mix? Because I think it's important. Sure. If you look at the increase in wages, it's actually done better than the rate of inflation.
Well, that's been a debating point, because some people are complaining about the rate of increase in wages.
People always have to complain. I am somebody, as you know very well,
right,
who has made a career out of complaining about the rate of increase.
Yes, you have. Yes, you
right?
have.
And I have to tell you, you look at the numbers, even the real numbers, it's not where I think it should be.
Right.
But it has come a ways. It's come a ways for a very simple economic reason. Haven't been enough people to put into employment. And when you're tight on people for employment, wages go up.
Wages go up.
Competitive.
That's right.
That's the good news. So, I'll be back to complaining about it again, I assure you. but for right now, it's better, and it's better than the rate of inflation. Any way you look at this, I don't know how any rational human being can look at the economy and say, oh, it's bad. I mean, inflation is a problem, no denying it. But by the way, anybody who knows anything knows you don't blame presidents for inflation, no matter what party they're from.
Yeah,
Inflation
but
is
that's not what we see happening. And the fact that you say that everybody knows that they don't know that.
well, no, that's true. They
They
don't.
don't know. It goes back to your,
That's because they don't know.
folks largely ignorant of facts like that. But what makes that much more difficult is that they don't want to be smarter about things like that. They wallow in that ignorance because they are, listening to and reading news sources that are only feeding the narrative that they like, that they want. Yep. And so the idea of broadening their perspective in the face of what they think they know, to me, has always been a challenge, particularly in this modern period of social media, which sort of begs what we see happening, for example, at CNN right now, where you have this incredible desire to kind of create this space for something, and we don't know quite what. I mean, you sort of break down and you look at, for example, what's been going on over there. This idea that that Chris Licht wanted to sort of create this neutral space to return CNN to its prior glory
Objective
after
news.
Yeah, right. Stepping into the Trump mess the way they did in 2016 by giving Trump the platform like a lot of media outlets did, then swinging 180 degrees and being anti-Trump, certainly in his broadcasts and in his personalities who are out there doing that, and now trying to realign itself and putting Trump on that platform like they did in that town hall, has all resulted in Licht being given the boot. And what did not help him was the piece in the Atlantic that showed just painful detail just how incompetent and inept all of those efforts were.
But see, I mean, I think I understand what happened at CNN. You know Chris Licht personally. All those years you worked together on Morning Joe. I don't know Chris personally, but I followed him for years. Chris is a very competent guy. He certainly was a very competent producer.
Right.
I think what happened was Chris took the directions of his employer, David Zaslav,
right,
who said, I want to return CNN to its prior position as the objective source for what's happening in the world. I think where Chris went wrong is he took that to heart, which isn't wrong, but he went about it much too quickly. You can't move a TV audience that fast. You can't go from A to Z overnight.
Right.
And that's what he tried to do. And that's what got him in trouble. I think the whole Atlantic piece was the result of him suffering. I just think he's been suffering. He was caught in a box between, all right, this is what my boss has demanded of me.
Right.
This is the problem I'm having turning this ship. And he felt the need to cry to somebody, and he picked a really weird place to cry. But I actually have sympathy for Chris Licht. I really do. He allowed himself to be put in an impossible situation. If he had to do it again, I'll bet he would profess the same goals, but would be willing to take much longer to get to it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's smart analysis of his situation. I think though, if he had to do it all over again, the result would be the same, and the result would be the same for the simple reason that that pressure cooker, whether whether then or under new circumstances and situations and conditions, would be the same. The network can't wait for that audience to grow.
But you can gradually move it.
You can gradually move it, but you cannot. Here's where I think the miscalculation comes down. You're not going to move a Fox audience to CNN.
No,
you're just not. So the question becomes, who's our audience?
MSNBC,
who are we going after?
And everybody who's not watching.
Well, yeah. So it's largely going to be everyone who's not watching, because the reality of it is the MSNBC audience is not necessarily going to move. You may pull 2 or 3%, but you're not pulling off of Joy Reid's show. You're not going to pull off of Lawrence O'Donnell. You're certainly not going to pull off of Rachel Maddow, right? So the question becomes, who's your audience? I don't think they answered that question first.
That could be. I don't know. I maybe I'm part of that 2 or 3%. I watch MSNBC as a rule, not just because you're on it.
Well, I appreciate that.
But I watch it. But you know what? The bias is very clear to me. And if CNN were to return to CNN of old, I'd probably go with them.
But here's the thing. So, okay, and why would that be? And I think it's in this point.
Because I want to.
If there's a national catastrophe, if there's a major news event,
right,
CNN blows up.
They do. You're right.
So if I'm running the network, if I'm looking at it, I'm going, so what is it about that story? What are people looking for that they're going to stop? They're now going to stop watching Fox, or they're going to stop watching MSNBC, or more importantly, that group of viewers out there who don't tune into cable on a regular basis.
Right.
What is it about this moment that brings them to CNN, and how do we recreate that moment without hyperbole and a lot of fake noise to drive them to say, be a part of this conversation with us every day, even when there is not a major news event.
Don't you think it's habit that drives them? I mean, I still remember,
Partly.
When we invaded following Kuwait, right?
Right.
I watched all of that on CNN. We were actually on the floor of NAPTI, and what do we have it was CNN, because if you wanted objective, tell me what's happening, you went to CNN. I don't know that that's been true for a long time, and yet we all still go to CNN when something is breaking. There's that legacy of, well, they have the capabilities to cover the story in an objective way. Now, the truth is, if there's a breaking story, I've watched it on MSNBC, and it's legit.
Right.
They cover it legit. They don't try and skew it. Even Fox goes semi-legit when there's a breaking news story. There's some skewing and shading, but most of the networks will get it right. But there is this habit of going to CNN because there's really no other reason for it.
Well, and I think the other thing to keep in mind in the scenario that I put out there, that in those other times, in large measure, that audience is comprised of news junkies, right? They're comprised of news and political junkies. These are the people who are going to watch, 24/7. And that goes to my point. The people who aren't the news junkies, who aren't the cable junkies, yet in a moment of a national news event or big news event, they're going to turn to CNN.
And what tells them to do that?
That's what you need to unpack.
That's what you
because
have to
that
find
audience, it's not just lineage back to how CNN used to be, and sort of the knee-jerk response is to go back to CNN. That's changed over these many years, and yet, and still to your point, they'll tune in. So what is it that's making them tune in for that moment, but not these other moments?
See, I think, sadly, this can't happen, but if you could bring Bernard Shaw back to CNN, you would start what you were talking about. Yeah. You go through each one of their individual anchors, there's nobody there with that kind of news credibility? Nobody.
So why didn't they make better use of what's his name from Fox, Sunday?
Chris Wallace.
Chris Wallace.
I think that's a great question, because he has that kind of credibility.
He has that reputation. People see him, even when he was at Fox. I know a lot of MSNBC watchers, liberal oriented viewers.
I watched him every Sunday.
Who would watch him because he was credible in their eyes.
I have said for years that he was the best Sunday morning show.
Yeah. It was incredibly good to watch him, because he was the quintessential umpire, right? And he asked tough questions, and he didn't draw lines away from a story. He drew lines into the story so viewers could follow. And I'm just surprised they never took advantage of that.
Well, part of the answer might be what he wanted for himself, because to take advantage of him, to do what you're suggesting, you would have had to put him on every day on a show. I don't know that he wanted that. You can't establish that.
You can establish it. Yeah.
I mean, Fareed Zakaria, for example, is a credible source.
Right.
He's on once a week, so you can't really grow a network around him. You need to take people like him and like Chris Wallace and put them in the anchor chairs.
Right.
And all of a sudden you've got credibility, but that's not what's happened.
Yeah, I think this is going to be not just an awakening moment for CNN. I think it's an awakening moment for Fox and MSNBC, who are each going through their own particular transformations as this news and politics cycle resettles itself.
Maybe.
They're all at least expressing openly they're not going to come at the Trump campaign the way they did in 2016, where he got $3 billion of free advertising. Some would argue, well, so much for that, CNN already started that off with the town hall, and then they're trying to make up with all these other little town hall that nobody's watching.
Right.
But I think each of these major three cable stations are going to have to figure out this space with Trump, the Trump narratives, from the legal problems to the political push that he's making, and how all these other candidates fit in, but then also how they hold their audiences. I was reading a story in which they were talking about Licht and his issues, and the point was made that, one of the things that Licht wanted to do was to get us off of this sort of hyping of breaking story. Everything's a breaking story. Your Chiron is full of breaking news when there's no real breaking news. I mean,
that's right.
We got it. So he's kind of moved off of that piece. But we'll see how it plays.
To me, it's all about who you put into the anchor chairs. Man, I got to tell you, if I were running CNN, I would write a check for whatever it takes to get Rachel Maddow on my air.
Interesting.
Because she is, I mean, look, we all know that Rachel has a bit of a left-leaning skew.
Right.
But when she says something, I believe it.
Yeah.
And I think people from all political stripes believe it, which is why so many people watch her.
Yeah, that's true. I always gauged Rachel's success among conservatives by the level of screaming that you would hear about what she said. And then you'd ask them, well, what she said was true,
She
right?
also has, I continue to believe she has the most insightful opening 10 minutes in television.
Yeah, no, she's good. She's good. There's no doubt about it. And believe me, it was a major blow to MSNBC to have her come off the air every night. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Rick Ungar, my man. It's always good, brother, to sort of...
Yeah, we just got started.
I know, right? We're just warming up. We're just warming up. But I'm glad
you part two to this one.
I'm glad you could take a moment with me, man. I always appreciate your insights and wisdom on these pressing matters, and it's always good to see you looking good. It's
always
life in suburbia.
life in the hills.
All right, folks. Well, that does it.
You want to talk about my oncoming pickleball career?
Okay, you know what? We're going to put a pin in that for the next time, because you and pickleball, yeah, that's
Yeah.
I want photos first. I want some photos, because we're gonna have to show people that you are actually moving.
I'm moving.
Moving.
Yes. It hurts, but I'm moving.
He is nationally syndicated.
I don't know anymore what I'm nationally
Yeah,
syndicated.
talk show host. He's, businessman, entrepreneur, lawyer, political junkie, but all
Layabout.
good guy, Rick Ungar. Such a pleasure, my friend.
Always good to see you.
All right, folks, until next time, y'all be safe and be well out there. Do the download thing. Follow the program on Twitter at Steele_podcast. Follow Rick on Twitter at Rick Ungar, UNGAR, and follow me at Michael Steele. Until next time, be safe, be well. God bless.